I'm Doug Thompson of BDS Productions, and welcome to this edition of We Are Branson, and we miss you and our special guest today, friend of mine, Melonie Brown, and she's in Branson. Melonie, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Doug, and yourself?
Oh, doing fine, doing fine. You know, we've been doing this series about We Are Branson and We Miss You, and what we have found out about it is that we started with the idea to be able to share to the entertainers about the fans, so that the fans would be able to see their entertainers. But what we found as we started in on this process is the entertainers say, well, we are Branson and we miss you, and the entertainers say we miss the crowd. Not only, when I'm not just talking about the financial portion of it, but they said they many times become like family, and they come back regularly, and you get to see, last time I saw you, you were pregnant. Yep, well, we got a little one now, and whatever the story is, or we have grandkids and so forth. And so the entertainers consistently tell me, we are Branson because that's where we are and this is what we do, but we miss you. And that both directions. The fans miss the performers miss the fans.
That is so true, Doug, because, you know, most performers are people. They enjoy people, or they couldn't do what they did.
Right.
Now, occasionally you find that one that's, you know, likes to perform but really doesn't like to interact with the crowd, but very, very few. And so it's like lonely, you know. Everybody, Branson's like a ghost town.
Yeah.
You drive down the street, there's nobody here. And I said yesterday, this is like deep of winter when there's nobody here.
Yeah.
It's like, bring them back, the sun's shining.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I hear. We've got some condos in Branson, and my sister's there, and she says, you know, this time of year it would normally be bumper to bumper, and except for how polite everybody is, you'd have trouble getting to turn into a location or get back out of it. And she said, now she said I could close my eyes and walk across the street, and the chance of getting hit by a car are pretty minimal.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, Melonie, we go back a ways. We had you and the Melonie and the Harmony Trio, I should say, out here in Kansas, and you came out. Let's see, you performed at Emmanuel Church. That's our church, and then we took you to the prison, Kansas State Prison at Ellsworth, and I can tell you the prisoners absolutely loved you guys being willing to come out to the prison and share with them. We'll put one of the pictures up of the what was going on out there as much as we can show. And then the third one, you went to Westview Church in Manhattan, which is the hometown of Kansas State University, and you were there with Deb Klutz and the Homestead Ministry, which helps young women with sex trafficking, to get out of that sex trafficking and prostitution and everything that goes with it. And you guys had a fantastic weekend and a very busy one. Tell me about Harmony Trio.
Well, Harmony Trio, that was the greatest impact coming to the prison. It's been interesting, Doug. We've sang different places. In fact, we've sang in Israel since then, and we were singing for the Day of Prayer here in Branson. But going to the prison, it did something for all of us. It showed us that we take our freedom too much for granted. You know, but for the grace of God, there go I. My grandmother used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
But for the grace of God, that could have been me in there.
Yeah.
And so that meant a whole lot to us. Kids are graduating. Babette's got a son graduating. I have a son graduating. Lola's teaching, so she doesn't get to graduate. But anyway, just about at the edge now to where we feel like God is really going to start opening more doors for us to continue to minister and to sing and to share the gospel.
Yeah. Tell me about the other two members of the Harmony Trio.
Well, Babette Fogel, her and her husband own the Fogel Family Enterprise, and they own like 5 or 6 restaurants. And so this whole pandemic has really impacted them a lot.
Oh, I can imagine.
You know, the whole Branson, watching everything close up. And I will say this, that I've seen many of the restaurants do, and they had just purchased food because it was spring break. Everybody was going to be coming in. They were going to be serving people. They started to give that food out to needy people and help. And so Babette's been still manning that and making sure that anybody has a need, that she's working in that area. Aloha is a school teacher. And so now she's doing just what you and I are doing on Zoom. She's teaching her class, their math and their different subjects through the internet.
Oh, I bet she's doing an awesome job. Both of your teammates are just excellent people.
Oh, they are. They are. You know, I told somebody recently, I said, God put us together. It wasn't something that we did. God put us together, and there is a bond there. There's a unity there, and we all just love sharing Jesus.
Yeah, I remember that because that was obvious. There wasn't any question about it when you went out to each of the 3 spots that you went with us that weekend, and then we did a show here at the studio where we're at right now at BDS Productions. And that was obvious. You guys touched the hearts of the prisoners, or the offenders as we call them, out of the prison, and they were so thankful that somebody would come in and come from the outside of you guys' ability, come in and then perform for them. They were just...
You know, Doug, can I say there was not, some people would think going into the prison, oh my gosh, you know, scared. There was not an ounce of fear among any of us. There was more or less, how can we share something that's going to touch and impact their life and change their life forever?
Yeah.
You know, I don't want them to have jailhouse salvation. I want them to have a real relationship with Jesus, that when they walk out of that place, that relationship goes on goes. You know, I'm in a relationship, you know, I'm getting married in let's see, 38 days, I think it is. And so we wouldn't be headed toward marriage had we not kept communication every day. Had we not talked to each other, had we not had dinner, had we not spent time going to church and to a movie and really getting to know each other. Well, man forgets that's the way it is with our relationship with Christ.
Yeah, yeah.
So many think he's in a book, and the book's on the table, and if I get time, if I get bored, I'll open the book. But where's the relationship there? You know, he wants you to know him. He knows you, but he wants you to know him, and then he spotlights things in your own life so you can see what he wants to do in your life.
Yeah, and the Lord formed, the Lord knew us before we were ever formed and sent here on this earth, and he already knows about us well.
He does.
Yeah.
He really does.
Yeah. You know, you were talking about you're going to get married pretty soon, and your future husband's going to be Jim Barber.
Exactly.
And Jim's an entertainer, has been an entertainer in Branson for many, many years.
25.
Yeah.
25 years or something like that.
And well, if I go back to Harmony Trio for a minute, if I take a look at the years of entertainment business, Babette, tell me about what she was doing before.
19 years she was the lead female vocalist for the Osmonds. She sang with Jimmy Osmond, and then I've heard, I wish I could remember her whole bio, but I mean there's others that she sang with, and even down in Arkansas, it was funny, we were down in Eureka and we were driving around, and she goes, okay, now I sang there at this pageant, or I sang here for this event. And so she's been musical for a long time, and she loves her music, but she, like a lot of entertainers, stopped and took care of her family first. And you know, except for, she would tell me when she first started, she would take the kids and somebody'd watch them in the back while she went and performed, and then take her kids and go home. And
yeah, I remember that. I remember her sharing that story. And while we're talking about sharing some stories, you have been involved in foster kids program for many, many years. Tell us about your involvement.
Well, you know, I became a foster parent in 2005. And my son's best friend had some issues at home with his dad, and my son called me crying, Mom, we got to take care of him, we got to help. We did. We became kinship placement, and out of that went right into foster care. Since then, I have personally fostered 29 children. The last 2 I helped were a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old that were in a hotel here in Branson. And, you know, I'm not big in stature, but I'm pretty bold. I just went out and asked what could I do to help, and the next thing I know, I had these 2 babies, and we're feeding them and taking care of them and providing clothes, and it's Christmas. And I will say I've heard they've gotten adopted, which is great.
Excellent.
I was not in the position at that point. You know, there's one thing to have a heart for it. There's another thing to understand your limitation. And I knew as a single mom right then of 4 teenagers, I could not keep up with a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old and 4 teenagers. It was just too much.
Yeah.
So they have been adopted. Foster care right now has been under a great strain because they're having to do video chats like this. They're having to do FaceTime. They're having to do Skype. They're not allowed to do visits unless they're home visits, and some of those home visits just depends on as long as nobody's sick, So that's put a distance between the children and the parents that are trying to reunify or trying to get, in the right state. So that's a little hard there for them. And I know the caseworkers, I talked to a caseworker not long ago, and she was like, oh my gosh, she said, to be my job, I'm supposed to be seeing people. I'm supposed to be going and taking care of it. She said it's hard to do it just through the computer. It's a hands-on thing. It's not just a online thing. So.
I understand, and I recall from our prior conversations that as you've been involved in the foster program, you wound up adopting a number of kids into your family.
I did. We adopted 3. They're a sibling group, and they've had their challenges. But all of my children have had challenges in some way. I think the hardest part for them was not remembering who their mom was and things like that. Since the oldest turned 21, I will share that I helped her connect with her biological mother. I'm not threatened, and I felt like if that would give her answers, she was going through a lot of counseling. I thought maybe that might help her, and she did not find what she was hoping to find. And she probably really understands the reasons why now she was in foster care. And so, they have communication. She did find some siblings, half siblings that she thought she had. She did find those.
Good.
Yeah, that's been good. But overall, the youngest that we adopted told the group, said, wait, stop. You're not living a life that's going to be a good example for me. I don't need this. And I was really pleased to hear that, Doug, you and I both, you can sow seed all you want to. Sometimes it feels like it falls on deaf ears.
Yeah.
But to turn around down the road and start hearing what you've been preaching and putting in come out is very rewarding.
Yep.
Very rewarding.
I'm familiar with that. Just by the nature of my business as an attorney and a judge and the other activities I'm involved in, I'm very familiar with that. Well, I know with Harmony Trio, you guys started your season this year at IMAX, and you started March 13th, and it ended on the 17th.
It did. I work, along with me managing 4 stores there at the IMAX, that was not my call. That was God's call, I assume. I believe it was anyway. But I started out there singing for James Garrett's show, for the John Denver Tribute Show. And singing in that little stage, and then somebody saw me one day and asked me would I be interested in working for the IMAX, and that's where I've come. And the girls and I have pleasure several times to go in there and sing on that stage, especially on Sunday morning. We're welcome to sing in James' stage any day. The biggest thing is right now, there's no people, Doug.
Yeah. We can't get together. Just can't get together right now, but it too shall end, and it will turn out all right.
Right.
Yeah. And that's part of what we've done this series for is we are Branson, and that's you, and we miss you. And that means the fans who will be watching this will say, I miss seeing them. And when we go to Branson, we're going to look her up. We're going to the IMAX. We're going to go to wherever she is. And the opposite side of that is the fans don't realize, but when after you perform and you get a chance to talk to them, whether it's halftime or whenever it is, you are so good about, tell me what you got going. Tell me about your family and stuff. And pretty soon, when the fans go back and sit down for the rest of the show, or when they walk out of there, they say, I didn't find out much about her at all, but I wound up telling her about the kids, about my husband, about this thing that happened to us, the loss we've suffered in the family, and they walk out and feeling like, well, she's like family to us. And that's the way that you always make them feel.
Well, what you're saying is so true, because I can be in a store and people have seen me in the show and they come out and go, oh, you're the one, and we remember you from last time. I'll be checking somebody out and they'll go, Now, you know, we saw you when you sang such and such, and you took a picture with my little girl, or you helped us, or you brought us candy for our children, or, you know, and then I'll say, well, where are they? Let's see how big they've gotten. Yeah, you're right. Our travelers, our tourists are our family. And so here in Branson, we need them to come back. Now, I know, like everybody's going to be a little nervous,
Yeah.
but he who abideth in the shadow of the Almighty, he's protected.
Yes. Yes.
Protected. And for months I've been praying, and I found out other prayer warriors, even here in Branson, have been praying, Lord, just put a bubble over Branson, protect us. Now, we do have some corona, but not hardly any. You know, let us all get back to where we need to be. But
Yeah.
like you and I talked earlier, I believe God reset the clock with this.
Yeah. I agree with you.
He didn't bring it. He didn't cause it. But Scripture says what Satan means for harm, God turns for good.
Yeah.
So Satan's meant harm out of this, but God's people have said, hey, wait a minute. I'm going to tell you about Jesus. I've seen people I wouldn't even think knew Jesus start telling other people about Jesus. I've seen people start saying, hey, wait a minute, come worship with me. I've seen people say, hey, wait a minute, let me take time and have, you know, I get tickled that the moms are getting tired of cooking in the kitchen. I'm like, well, start training the kids and let them cook, you know. But families, to see families together. And I was talking to somebody dear that you know, as well as the Petersons the other day, and we were talking about how that used to be Sundays were absolutely dedicated, number one, to God, two, to family. And I think God would be really pleased with that. I want to see economic success, but not at the cost of our families.
Yeah.
And not at the cost of our priorities. Our priority is number one, Christ first, Jesus first, and then our family. And then, you know, don't get it, if you get it backwards, it don't work.
No, it doesn't work. It does not work. Feels like it works for a while because you're only thinking of yourself and within yourself. But after you get through it a little bit, then you say, you know, what I was doing before makes no difference. What I'm doing now for the Lord is what opens the doors and makes the eternal differences.
Absolutely. Well, you and I, neither one have seen a hearse with a U-Haul behind
Yeah,
us.
that's right.
If we gather here, we do not take with us.
Yeah.
The only hope that you and I have of taking anybody with us is those souls that have come to know Jesus. Then we know we can take them with us. But the rest of us, it's not going to go with us.
Yeah. Well, amen to that. We're going to cut away, and we'll be done with the program. But what we're going to do is, I'll put a picture of that. Glenda will put a picture of from the prison, and we'll put some film footage up from some of your footage with the trio performing, and you'll be able to watch us a little bit down the road. But it is We Are Branson, and we miss you. And Melonie, we miss you. Thank you for being with us.
You too.
All right.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay. You take care.
Thanks. You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm not gonna be discouraged, and I'm not gonna be depressed. Nothing's too big for God. Nothing's too big for God. Nothing's too big for God.